Whisperers, Private Life in Stalin's Russia by Orlando Figes is a profound exploration of the private lives of ordinary Soviet citizens during Joseph Stalin's rule, focusing particularly on the era of the Great Terror, 1936 to 1938. Drawing upon extensive interviews, personal memoirs, and archival research, Figes provides a vivid portrayal of the human cost of Stalin's totalitarian regime, illuminating the emotional and psychological toll inflicted on the people who lived under constant surveillance and fear. Figes starts by noting that the Soviet Union under Stalin was a society that was shaped by fear, where the state permeated every aspect of life, including the most intimate and private realms. The title of the book, The Whisperers, refers to the way in which Soviet citizens communicated in an atmosphere of suspicion, where even family members were not exempt from betraying one another. The whispering of secrets in private homes, on street corners, or in offices was a means of survival, but it also reflected the pervasive distrust that plagued the society. The cult of personality and totalitarianism. Figes begins by addressing the nature of Stalin's power and its direct impact on the private lives of ordinary people. Stalin's rise to power marked the beginning of a new phase in Soviet history, the era of totalitarianism, where the state controlled not only politics and economics, but also culture, social life, and even private relationships. The cult of personality around Stalin was central to this process, as the leader was not merely a political figure, but a symbol of the state itself. Under Stalin, Soviet citizens were expected to demonstrate unwavering loyalty to the state and the Communist Party. Any sign of disloyalty, however small, was met with brutal punishment. The state's reach extended far beyond the political realm, infiltrating the family, the workplace, and the everyday routines of citizens. Loyalty to the party was paramount, and anyone suspected of harboring subversive thoughts was at risk of being arrested, imprisoned, or executed. The atmosphere of fear and the Great Terror Figes highlights the particularly brutal period of the Great Terror, when Stalin's purges swept through the Soviet Union, culminating in mass arrests and executions. The purges were a response to Stalin's paranoia about potential rivals both within and outside the Communist Party, and were an attempt to consolidate his absolute power. During this period, the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, carried out systematic arrests, often based on flimsy or fabricated evidence. People lived in constant fear of being denounced, not only by their colleagues or acquaintances, but also by their own family members. This fear created an atmosphere of distrust and suspicion in every interaction. Families became divided as individuals were forced to choose between loyalty to their loved ones and loyalty to the state. Many people betrayed their own relatives in exchange for safety or advancement, leading to the destruction of entire families. Figes' research emphasizes how ordinary people lived in a state of constant anxiety, never knowing if they would be the next to be arrested. The terror was not only political, but also psychological, as the fear of betrayal, arrest, or death loomed over everyone. Stalin's purges were not limited to political elites or intellectuals, but affected ordinary citizens as well, showing the extent of the regime's control over society. Impact on family life. One of the book's most poignant themes is the effect of Stalinism on family life. The family, which should have been a private space where individuals could find solace, became another site of surveillance and control. The government's intrusion into family life was profound, and people were forced to navigate the complexities of loyalty, betrayal, and survival within their own households. The role of women in this context is particularly striking. Figes explains how Soviet women were placed in a difficult position, often forced to juggle their roles as mothers, wives, and workers, while also contending with the constant pressure to conform to the state's expectations. Women were often the first to be arrested or punished for their supposed political transgressions, and their families were left to deal with the aftermath. The breakdown of the family structure during the Great Terror is heartbreaking. Children were often used as informants, reporting on their parents' activities to the authorities. Parents, too, betrayed their children, either to protect them or to ensure their own survival. The atmosphere of fear that permeated every household led to the erosion of trust within families, and the once sacred institution of the family became another tool for the state's control. The role of surveillance and informants. A critical aspect of the Whisperers is the exploration of how the state's surveillance apparatus operated. Figes examines how the NKVD encouraged citizens to inform on one another. The process of denunciation was not limited to high-ranking officials or political elites. Ordinary people were also encouraged to report any suspicious activity, even if it was trivial. The widespread use of informants meant that no one was safe, as any individual could be accused of being an enemy of the state. The informant culture created a society where people were constantly on edge, not knowing if they could trust even those closest to them. This led to a situation where individuals lived in constant fear of being reported, and the fear of denunciation became as important as the fear of arrest or execution. Figes paints a picture of a society where the lines between friend and foe became blurred, and the only way to protect oneself was to conform to the state's expectations. The use of informants was not only a means of maintaining control, but also a tool for creating a sense of loyalty to Stalin and the party. People were encouraged to report on their colleagues, neighbors, and even family members, creating a society in which betrayal was normalized. This culture of betrayal, coupled with the constant surveillance of private lives, helped to solidify Stalin's totalitarian regime. Memory and trauma. Another significant theme in The Whisperers is the impact of the Stalinist regime on the collective memory and trauma of those who lived through it. Figes explores how the trauma of living under Stalin's terror affected individuals and communities long after the purges ended. Many people who survived the purges or had family members arrested or executed lived with the psychological scars of their experiences for the rest of their lives. The fear of surveillance and betrayal remained even after Stalin's death in 1953. People who had lived through the purges often struggled to forget the lessons they had learned about survival in a totalitarian state. The trauma of betrayal and loss was carried across generations, and the fear of political repression continued to shape Soviet society. Figes emphasizes how the trauma of the Stalinist period influenced the way people remembered and talked about the past. Many survivors chose to remain silent about their experiences, unwilling to revisit the pain of the past. Others, however, attempted to share their stories, but they were often met with disbelief or indifference. The trauma of the Great Terror and the purges continued to haunt Soviet society for decades. The Whisperer's private life in Stalin's Russia offers an intimate and harrowing account of the effects of Stalinism on ordinary Soviet citizens. Through personal stories and historical analysis, Figes paints a vivid picture of a society where fear and suspicion were pervasive, where family members betrayed one another, and where the state's control extended into every corner of private life. The book is a powerful reminder of the human cost of totalitarianism, and it underscores the profound impact that political repression can have on the individual and the collective memory of a nation.